Kids, what are you going to say? You like that, buddy? Dancing? Little dance? Little shimmy? Little shimmy shimmy? In fact, that's the name of the song. This rocks. My little one. Hey, yo, locals. Got a little schedule update we got to work on here. I was incorrect the other day, but we'll fix it. Cool, right? All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. Links below to the subscribers, blah, blah. Links below for the advertisers and stuff that I'm going to blast off during the show. And, of course, the public polling project. All right, so let's get started here, though, because there is something that we're going to talk about after we get through with the Senate stuff, which is frankly related. But it's like, what defines the current messaging war? And how could you win it? You know, I mean, that's the bottom line. All right, so we've looked at this before. First, I want to get into the Senate situation. The bottom line is, and I tweeted it today, that Republicans absolutely will never drain the swamp if the current Senate remains, right? Donald Trump does what he can as the president, but this little booger, he does what he can as the president, but he is one man and he's in one branch. The U.S. Senate, he must have the cooperation of the U.S. Senate in order to drain the swamp, okay? And the bottom line is there are some seats they should have gotten in 2024, and it doesn't appear that they've learned much of their lessons. So why isn't it going up? There it is. All right, first and foremost, here is the U.S. Senate race in Michigan. All right. So we've talked about this ad nauseum. I had to like remind people yet last week on Twitter about this, because if there's some people that no matter what happens, Donald Trump comes out and he says, you know, I'm endorsing somebody and that's it. And people are like, oh, it's such a great endorsement, you know, and that's just how it goes. The fact of the matter is Mike Rogers is the worst kind of Republican to run in the state of Michigan. It doesn't matter if he has Donald Trump's support outside of the Republican primary. When it comes to a general election, this is exactly what I mean when I say that the Trump or bust voter, especially the low propensity, the younger, the millennial and below, but the low propensity, if you're the Republican, I need to make them into a Republican voting bloc that only votes for Donald Trump. Or maybe some of them, and they did, as we can see in this result, some of them did throw their votes to Mike Rogers. But when you compare it to what Donald Trump got, it simply isn't enough. And as you can see here, Mike Rogers got over 100,000 fewer votes than Donald Trump got. I mean, frankly, folks, it's more than 100,000. It's, you know, I mean, I said over, but it's more in the ballpark of 100 and a quarter, a little over 100 and a quarter. So why? Where does this come from? All right. Look, this is exactly what I mean, though, when I say that the Republican Party's sole job after Donald Trump won the White House was to convince these voters that the Republican Party is now the party of Donald Trump for real, that the Republican Party is becoming more like Donald Trump for real this time. Not the other way around. And when you see endorsements like this, when frankly, there are other people that Donald Trump could have supported, it's not the right direction. There are very few people who are willing to stand around and tell, look, the left can't stand me. Why does the left hate my guts, folks? The left hates me because I polled Donald Trump correctly. and I estimated Donald Trump's support in this country correctly, all the years when other people could not, and when they thought they were going to win, and by the way, win handily. They thought that their pollsters were right, and that if that wasn't the case for even marginally, if that wasn't the case, something ridiculous must have happened in order for this result to have come to fruition, such as, and this is the human mind's ability to convince ourselves of things we want to believe. And in the case of the left, it was Donald Trump was a Russian asset, and he colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the 2016 election. It sounds utterly ridiculous. And now we know that really it was just the beginning of a seditious conspiracy, which is, Donald Trump himself used the T word. He used the word treason. I would, if I was the president, be more careful with calling Barack Obama a treasonous person, because you cannot deliver accountability for the people that you're going to hype up to do that. He already began to walk it back, and that is smart. But all of the other people that are in the bureaucratic state, in the administrative state, the swamp, that did participate in that conspiracy absolutely did commit treason. They committed treason against you. You are the sovereign voter. And they decided that they were going to fabricate this thing they knew Democrats would believe because of what they had been force-fed by everybody except me. And Robert Cahaley was around at that time, by the way. It's and I think Matt Tower was there. He just didn't poll as much. But Robert Cahaley and I polled every single state. I polled nationally. He did not. Rasmussen, of course, was there as well. They did very well. They didn't poll states like we polled states. But they certainly got the national vote much more accurate than basically everybody else outside of, in that space. And in any event, the left hates me for that. The right doesn't want to hear the truth. The right has a hard time because they've overcome, or at least Donald Trump has. They is not the correct word. That's not the correct pronoun. Excuse me. Donald Trump has overcome so much that he is now taken on this almost superhuman, larger than life persona, like Hulk Hogan, by the way. And by the way, there's a perfect example of what I mean when I say Donald Trump made the Republican Party cool again. And now the Republican Party's job is to be like Donald Trump, not the other way around. I'm going to repeat this over and over again. And this endorsement with Mike Rogers makes Donald Trump more like the Republican Party, not the Republican Party more like Donald Trump. All right. So the right now is obviously, having a hard time coming to grips with this. And the reason why this is so important is because for those of you who are new, maybe you don't know, but like those of us who were around during the first Trump win and that election period, and then subsequently his administration, we're seeing a lot of the telltale signs. All right. Those of us who are being honest, we see a lot of the same signs from the first administration that sunk him, by the way, in the second administration. And one of the biggest problems are these endorsements in the U.S. Senate. Why? Because the Senate, and I named this episode Treason in the Senate for a reason. The Senate has a unique role in Washington in advancing federal policy. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's not. The House has the power of the purse. The Senate has the power to regulate. The reason why rent seekers wanted it and they wanted the log rolling deal with the 16th and 17th Amendments, a couple of reasons. One is it's cheaper to buy a senator who has an expanded average tenure in the U.S. Senate. If you have to constantly buy a new senator every time the state legislator calls them back, it gets very, very expensive. But also there's the issue of seniority, which is basically how Washington runs. They decide, senior senators decide what regulatory policy, what competitive advantage, right? And by the way, this goes all the way even oversight in intelligence agencies. They decide how much scrutiny these agencies are going to get. They decide which companies are going to get a competitive advantage. And when you are a senior member of this body, you decide what gets advanced and what gets tabled. The currency in Washington, D.C. is quid pro quo. Everything is quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I will scratch yours. And you have to earn what is called in D.C. trustworthiness. You have to be trustworthy that when I vote for your bill, when the time comes, you will vote for mine. Or It's not even a bill. It's a simple example. You will do what I need you to do. And unfortunately, in this U.S. Senate, doesn't matter if there's an R or a D after the last name. When it comes to the administrative state, they are all owned by the administrative state. They're owned by K Street part and the administrative state in another part. And there's nothing that can be done about it if these people consistently win re-election. All right. One of these horrible, horrible offenders on the side of the administrative state, and we have two of them we're going to talk about today. One of them is former Representative Mike Rogers, who used to, and this is why dumb Republican consultants think they're so smart when they go out and pick people like him. They think Mike Rogers used to be able to win a part of the district no longer exists. Now the new district, Alyssa Slotkin, is represented. Okay. Now she's a U.S. Senator because she defeated Mike Rogers, but it ran through Holly and Oakland, right? And that's how she was able to break into that Republican constituency. I'm just a girl from Holly. She herself is a deep state hack. There hasn't been a single foreign policy failure over the last, in this century, that Alyssa Slotkin was not a part of when she worked for CIA and other intel agencies. She was a part of the failed regime change operation in Iraq, something Mike Rogers supported. And in this part of the country, this posture, this pro-intel agency, this pro-intervention, because Mike Rogers is a neocon, okay? This pro-interventionist, this anti-labor, which he is. He tried to bullshit voters in 24, and he tried to pretend that he was pro-labor. Oh, yes, I totally agree with Donald Trump. Yes, we have to be much more favorable to the unions. It didn't work. And you can see that shortfall in counties, by the way, like Macomb, where he won more. He won fewer than 20. Okay, I'm saying this wrong. Donald Trump squeezed out of Macomb County more than 20,000 votes more than Mike Rogers. Macomb is so important because you're going to lose neighboring Oakland, okay, where, by the way, Mike Rogers lost. You're going to lose neighboring Oakland, but you need Macomb and Monroe, which is to the south, all in the southeastern part of the state. And actually, let me show you that. Get rid of this guy up on the screen. All right, let me pull this back up. I had something I was going to read to you, but it's important, so we'll go over it. All right, let me stop that one, pull this one back up. If I show you the counties, you will understand. It will make it easier for me to explain this to you. Let's look at Donald Trump's win, okay? You need to win Macomb, which Republicans cannot do unless Donald Trump is running. This is so important. Oh, my God. We cannot overlook this. Republican candidates statewide and at the federal level lose Macomb County when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. Tudor Dixon, crushed. And she was thought to have been a, fairly Trumpy candidate. She had a lot of structural disadvantages. She was one of the candidates that the Republican establishment intentionally sabotaged. They didn't want Donald Trump's brand in 22, so they intentionally sabotaged her along with Doug Mastriano and Kerry Lake, right? This is the Ricketts family. And these are all of the people who throw money at people like Mike Rogers. And by the way, the next guy we're going to talk about, Lindsey Graham. All right. This 55.9% margin in Macomb, 56% of the vote is already strong enough, but it is the number of votes that he got out of this damn county, folks. Historic, by the way, in Michigan, historic turnout. 284,660 votes for Donald Trump, a little less than 215,000 for Kamala Harris, for a margin of 56-42, which, by the way, is the exact margin we projected Donald Trump was going to win the county by, if you go and look at our poll. All right. Now, look at Mike Rogers, 53-44. I will submit right here and right now. And by the way, look, 265,000 votes, a little less than 266,000. So, in other words, 20,000 fewer votes than Donald Trump out of Macomb. Big problem, big problem. Stay tuned, and I will tell you why. But I will submit right now that Mike Rogers will probably, almost certain, lose Macomb County in the 2026 midterm general election. Why? It doesn't go Republican unless it goes for Donald Trump. Monroe is the much more Republican county, which you can see Mike Rogers netted 22,000 votes, a little under. It's like 21,600 votes he netted out of it with a margin of 61 to 36. You need these two to offset how badly you are going to lose Oakland County as a Republican. This is actually not that bad of a net, okay? And I'm going to show you why. It's not Mike Rogers. I'm going to show you why. It's less than 100,000 votes. Let me mute my damn phone with these people who constantly call to try. And it is awful. I need a nap to screen people. Anyway, a little less than 100,000 votes net that came out of there. All right. But still, when you put together Mike Rogers' net here, which is about 50K, along with his 20K here, that's only about 70K. Not enough to make Oakland a wash. And by the way, you will note that he lost the state by just under half that wash that he failed to get. Okay. Big deal. Anyway, let's go to the margin now for Donald Trump. And I'm going to explain to you why he lost these areas the way he did. Donald Trump, 56 to 42, and he squeezed 60,000 votes out of Macomb County. All right. 20K more. Here, he squeezed 5,000 votes out of Monroe, more than Mike Rogers did. 63 to 36. Now, Mike Rogers will win Monroe County. He will. Okay. I mean, that's a Republican county, and Republicans obviously do well there. If you look, and this is the hilarious part that makes Republican consultants so stupid. They're morons. They think they're so smart, and they are incredibly dumb people. Here is Donald Trump's loss in Oakland, 54 to 44. Again, less than 100,000 votes, 54 to 44. All right. Rogers squeezes. Slotkin gets a little bit more of the vote than Kamala Harris does, because there are more like viable third-party candidates down ballot that obviously threw their votes to Slotkin, but not Harris. But yet Rogers underperforms Trump anyway. And here's the kicker, because this is Oakland, more affluent, more rich, more educated, affluent, white voters who used to be silk stocking kind of Republicans. They definitely like Mitt Romney a lot more. Go back and look at how Mitt Romney fared in Oakland County. Pretty well. All right. This is that kind of county where Republicans think they can win back if it wasn't for Donald Trump, who drags us down. In any event, it's all bullshit. They end up doing worse than he did in an area like this anyway. All that remains is that they did not perform in the working class areas and the non-white areas as strongly as Donald Trump. So it ends up being what? A loss. If you look in counties, by the way, all the way up, there's Saginaw right there. Look how close Saginaw was. Mike Rogers lost it by 9 votes. All right. He lost Genesee County. Look at Donald Trump. All right. He did lose Genesee, closer. And guess what? He won Saginaw. I can't imagine why. What would it be that caused Mike Rogers to underperform? It's just so obvious. Voters smell bullshit, folks. That's why. Unions, big deal. We all saw the polling. We all went over it. We were obsessed over it. All right. Look at the Michigan Independent. The Michigan Independent headline screams, and this is on September 22nd in 2023. Mike Rogers says he supports the UAW strike, but fought against unions consistently in Congress. Voters aren't dumb, especially these voters. These are blue-collar, white and non-white, working-class union workers who like Donald Trump. And by the way, given the right candidate, they could vote against Donald Trump, given the right candidate. Joe Biden did considerably better with these voters than Hillary Clinton did. And you could remember, by the way, Teamsters have their polling. The UAW has their polling. I've done union polling. I tend to like it. The response rate is very high because the union says, take the damn poll, and they take it. These voters are not divorced from the Democratic Party because they vote for Donald Trump. They will vote for a Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. 100% they will. Some of them went to the ballot box or handed in, whatever. Maybe they sent it in early, however they decided to vote. And some of them who voted for Donald Trump said, you know what? I know Mike Rogers has not been a friend to me, but Democrats are not going to be a friend to Donald Trump for sure. So no matter what, I guess it's still smarter for me to put this little mark, put my mark down next to the guy who's got the R after their name. Many others, if you look at the undervote, many others decided, I don't think like that. And in fact, you have to earn my vote. This guy has been adversarial to me the entire time he was a U.S. representative. And by the way, represented, guys, the county I just showed you, the affluent, white, educated county, he represented. Donald Trump outperformed him in his own damn backyard. Unreal. The theory of the case is like completely wrong, which you should know by now, given everything we discussed leading up to this election. And by the way, if you've been with us a while, every other damn election that Donald Trump has impacted in the last 10 years, you should know that that is bullshit. In very, very few parts of the country, I have polled everywhere, in all types of congressional districts, in all variant types of states where Senate races, they're competitive, and the presidential election, everywhere. And there are a handful of districts in this country where if you poll them and you say, do you prefer an America First Republican or a generic, whatever, traditional, even moderate, whatever kind of word you want to use, there are very few districts where if you're polling it correctly, the MAGA candidate will fall short compared to the moderate or because moderate stands for something to them. It doesn't mean what Fox News wants everyone to think it means. Moderate means that's a typical Republican. He's anti-union. That's a typical Republican. He's pro-intervention. That's a typical Republican. He'll sell me out on amnesty. 100%. That's what a moderate means to most of the voters like this across the country. And I could name some of those districts where a moderate is preferred, but I'm not going to. They are growing fewer and far between. When you drill down and ask people what platform they support, the MAGA platform is the more popular supported platform. Moderate Republicans don't really have a platform anymore. People don't even know what they stand for. And Mike Rogers is one of them. Just because Donald Trump tells these voters to vote for Mike Rogers does not mean they will. Sorry. Every election is not a Republican primary. So here we are again with all of these people giving the most awful endorsement advice to Donald Trump. And the worst part about it is he sows the seed of his own demise like this. He will be humiliated by some of these endorsements. It's going to happen. Going to happen. It would take a turnout disparity miracle for Mike Rogers to win in the state of Michigan moving forward. He is the worst kind of Republican. And if the Midwest Republican parties statewide across all these states want to continue to prop up these people because they can raise a few bucks, you will continue to lose. Someone has got to have the balls to say this out loud. I'm afraid of pissing off this one. I don't want to scare her. I don't want to upset her. I don't want to upset the president. What about the voter? What about the voter who now, likely 3 times, but officially twice, has voted for the Donald Trump agenda, only for it to be thwarted by people like Mike Rogers. You can shake his hand behind closed doors and, whoa, what a great guy. He will not support the trade policy of America first. He won't. He won't. He's been anti-union for 2 decades. He's suddenly going to change now? His donors are different because the same reason why the Republican Party likes candidates like this, their Rolodex, is the same reason why they'll never change. Because the same people are always going to be giving them money, and those same people are always going to expect something in return. And guess what, folks? They're not pro-union. They're not even pro try to find common ground with unions. They're union busters, and they hate them. Is Donald Trump a union buster? Is that how Donald Trump built skyscrapers and built up the Manhattan skyline? No, it is not. Is that how we got the nickname blue collar billionaire? No, it is not. Mike Rogers has the stain of multiple failed wars on him. He has the stain of multiple whitewash committee assignments to cover up criminal activity of the deep state. He will support FISA no matter what. We have Tulsi Gabbard putting out all of this stuff, exposing a treasonous, seditious conspiracy against you, not against Donald Trump, against you. Because what they did to Trump, he was just the target of it, folks. With the real sin of what Crossfire Hurricane and what they did that Gabbard's putting out is that they decided that they didn't like your vote and they were going to overrule it. They just came up with a more creative way this time because they already blew the head off of one president and they don't think they can get away with that again. This was the much smarter way to do it. What's Mike Rogers going to do about it? Absolutely nothing. Mike Rogers has been the CIA's bitch for 2 decades. He will continue to be their bitch. He supports secret FISA courts. That's it. Guess what, folks? The voters in Genesee and Saginaw County do not. They support domestic jobs. They don't want somebody reading their emails. They don't want somebody listening in on the other end of the line. They don't want bulk metadata collection, which, by the way, Mike Rogers called Edward Snowden a traitor and said the programs are vital. Even though, thanks to Rand Paul, we now know there wasn't a single plot thwarted from that program. Not one terrorist plot was thwarted from that program. Mike Rogers says otherwise. They're vital. Show me one. I can't. It's secret. Come on, folks. You back to the Bush years? Bush knows best. Bush knows best. Okay. How'd that work out? You don't trust anybody with that kind of power. Period. He was able to win a textbook districts of a silk stocking Republican migrant transplant, Kevin Phillips, silk stockings of the Northeast, moved to that area of the Rust Belt at a given time. And they used to be silk stocking Republicans. They are not now. They are called Democrats. And the only way to perform well enough in a county, by the way, like Oakland, is to take some of their usual vote away from them. Because you're not getting those voters back. Even Mike Rogers, being an admin state bitch, can't get those voters back. All right? It's never going to happen. The Republican consulting class is not smart. They're not coming back. Ron DeSantis ran on that entire philosophy. Jeff Rowe pumped his ear with that bullshit. How'd it work out? Would Ron DeSantis have been able to win that election? I don't think so. I think Ron DeSantis would have lost, just like Mike Rogers, actually. I think they would have drummed up his record that Barnes and others tried to warn about, that he was groomed, his pedigree, to be an administrative state kind of guy, which he was in Congress. He was. And it would have been close, but he would have lost. All 3 of them. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Goodbye. He would not have gotten UAW support. He would not have gotten Teamster support. That entire thesis is debunked. And yet they have these people convincing the president to endorse a guy who supports a program that was vital to his persecution and almost caused him to spend the rest of his years behind bars. It's unreal. All opposed by his voter, not a Republican voter, his voter. Again, I cannot stress this enough. MAGA, you need to actually win. They are the low prop voter. MAGA does not equal Republican. While there is a lot of MAGA that is Republican, it is not the sum total. The Republican element is not the sum total of MAGA. Is this like very complicated or something? You guys are smart. You get this. Why does this why do people continuously do and say the dumbest shit? It's not difficult to understand. And I just showed you 3 very important counties. Actually, more than that. We focused on Oakland, Macomb, and Monroe because you need to basically offset the third. And by the way, the third is just such a great example because the third is the one that the silk stocking people think they're going to win back. It's not going to happen. You can only hope to narrow the margin to stem the bleeding and then use the others to the new coalition in those two represented by those other 2 counties, because that's the 3 points here, the 4 points there that we just looked at. That's who it is. Like, why can't anyone else see this? And they're not stupid. And they're not going to buy you going to the stump after 20 years and saying, oh no, I'm really pro-union. Absolutely, we got to rein in the deep state. What the fuck are you talking about? You are the deep state. You let them do this. He did nothing but whitewash for illegal activities. You could raid a Senate building. The CIA could break into a classified Senate investigative building where somebody like Feinstein is running a secret program overseeing their criminal behavior. They could break into that and destroy evidence, and people like Mike Rogers do nothing about it because that happened. That actually happened. Oh my God. Could you imagine? It's like a Tom Clancy novel, isn't it? It's like a Tom Clancy novel. It actually happened. All right. 2:37. When we come back, I'm going to run another one. Let me just say this before we go to the break. And this is very simple. The current messaging war as it is right now is defined by Donald Trump's effort to try to use with the backdrop of an improving economy. All right. And this is all going on with the backdrop of an improving economy. And you have to keep that in mind. He's trying to bring out new elements of these scandals, all of these things that they did. And by the way, I mean, it goes without saying that if the roles were reversed and a Republican president did to the incoming Democrat, like a Bernie Sanders or a Barack Obama, what Barack Obama did to Donald Trump and to you, the voter, along with his friends in the administrative state, the word treason would be on every lower third in every network and cable news outlet 24/7. And it would be for 365 until someone's head, multiple heads, were lopped off. Think about what they did over January 6th, which was nothing. It's a protest that got rowdy. And anything got broken in the Capitol was because they were let in. I mean, it's so ridiculous. That was another fabrication. Of course, there was a crowd. Of course, they got rowdy. Of course, people did dumb shit. Looks like they were prompted and prodded and nudged to do it by a crooked federal government that also did what they did to Donald Trump. They're part of being a part of this conspiracy to undermine your vote. But it was nothing like that conspiracy. Whatever happened on January 6th, the worst of the worst behavior that you could Show me on footage or cite, which, by the way, more times than not, when you hear people who are still outraged over January 6th talk about it, they repeat lies. Brian was killed by a protester. What are you talking about? No, he wasn't. His family has even said multiple times, stop saying this. He died of natural causes. This guy had guy's ticker gave out, bro. And the hell are you talking about? No police officer was killed on January 6th as a result, or let me put it this way. No police officer or guardsman or anything, no law enforcement died on January 6th as the result of the actions of the protesters. Nothing. That's all lies. Those are all lies. Property that was damaged as a result of protesters illegally entering the congressional building was because they were allowed in. And anybody who's ever been to Congress knows that. You walk through the doors, you see how they work. You can't do what they were alleged to have done. You can't. It's not physically possible. The only person who died as a result of that confrontation was an Air Force veteran named Ashley Babbitt, who, if you have the stomach to watch it, you will see climbing her way through a glass window with both her arms and hands clearly visible like this, getting through the glass window when the cop shot her. No weapon, no nothing, shot. Bang! Right in the face. And they went on and droned on and on for 6 months. Hardcore about it. People went to jail. Could you imagine? Imagine if Bush had done this to Obama. Bush would be fried right now. They would have figured out some way to prosecute the president. 100%. There wouldn't be any need to worry about going hunting with Dick Cheney anymore because he'd be dead. They would have hung him already from K Street. People would have been tarred and feathered. Karl Rove's bald ass head would have been painted with tar. They would have threw feathers on him, lit him up like a chicken. Go, Karl! You kidding me? But no, not Golden Boy. So you have Donald Trump trying to use revelations, and new evidence. Have you read those? Some of them are handwritten. It's chicken scratch. Go through them. They're awful. It's like basically everything everyone knew it was, only it's even worse because you get to read it for yourself. Like they totally knew everything they said was full of shit. Could you imagine being Jim Comey? Can you be a pathological liar of that caliber? Or Brennan or Clapper or Obama himself? They all, or Biden, by the way. It was Biden's idea to use the Logan Act, by the way. They all knew they were full of shit. And yet they're all such pathological sociopaths that they were able to put on a show like that. It's unbelievable. Like, it's sick, folks. It's sick. It's sick. Trump is trying to use that to counter what Democrats, the trap that he walked into over Epstein. And he walked into it. And he made it worse. He made it worse himself. And that is the messaging war right now. And you will see, turn on Prime. Go to your TV, hit the Prime button, go to the Prime menu. Go to Netflix. Netflix is rerunning on the #1 broadcast thing where it's like ranks them there, and so is Prime. They're rerunning documentaries on the net. In the case of Netflix, they're running the documentary that we now know erroneously slanders and libels Alan Dershowitz, and they don't give a shit. Epstein, filthy rich, running right now. If you turn on your Netflix, it will be #1. There's 2 specials on the front of Prime right now. One is about Epstein himself, of course, and then the other one focuses more on Ghislaine Maxwell. Why would they be focused on Ghislaine Maxwell? Because they're bringing her to testify. And if you are on the right and you think that this is a good thing and there's going to be some revelation in there or something that's going to hurt other people and hurt you, you're crazy. This is a setup. Please learn how Washington works. Those of us who knew this was a setup, tried to say, all you have to do is this. And I understand people are asking for accountability. You offered it to them. Your vice president did. Your son did. Your director of the FBI did. Are you kidding me? And then worst, your attorney general thought she was going to become a Fox News cable star by offering it to them. You did this to yourself. You did exactly what they wanted you to do. And all you had to do was say the same crooks, the same traitors to the Constitution who engaged in the seditious conspiracy we now refer to as the Russia hoax are the same ones who had these documents and fudged them and messed with them all of these years. We will get you what we can when we can get them to you, but it will take some time because we have to protect innocent people from these crooks. Done. But instead, no. Call in the influencers. Binder part 1. Then when they actually opened them, they said, holy shit, look at what this stuff says. Duh. The great thing to do, maybe, I got a brilliant idea. Let's bring in Mike Rogers. He'll do a great job in the U.S. Senate, parsing through all this stuff. Holy crap. We'll be back. Let's take a break. All right, look, folks, I love them. I just had to reorder it because I'm out. And as we went over the other day, it's compounding benefits. All right, the benefits compound over time. Let's be honest. Most coffee gives you a quick hit, then it leaves you jittery, foggy, and reaching for another cup before lunch. But what if your coffee actually did something for your health? Rejuvenate Coffee is that coffee. Science-backed, real Arabica beans infused with CAAKG. Laura loves this stuff. I love this stuff. A compound shown to support cellular energy, metabolism, even healthy aging. It's not a gimmick and it's not your trend. You know, it's built for people who take their health seriously, who want to show up with focus and strength every single day. And by the way, it's delicious. If you care about how you feel and how you'll feel 10 years from now, this is your coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com/TPP. Order your Rejuvenate coffee today. Fuel your body, protect your future, and rejuvenate. Go and check out the link. And then like I did last week, go scroll down and go check out all the benefits. You don't need to listen to some testimonials of somebody. Do what Laura and I did. Look it up. You know, do your due diligence. It's freaking awesome. And as somebody who loves coffee, and I love delicious coffee, by the way, and I love 1775. Their dark roast is amazing. They're Arabic, whatever. So absolutely delicious. And it's all delicious, but I got to be careful with dark roast these days. And it might as well be something that does something good for you, right? And they're not talking about some garbage synthetic compound here. I don't know if you guys are, you know how Laura and I are, especially later in our years, bit of health nuts. You have got to have something that's natural to break down in your body. I'm not going to get into it. It's not a health show, but we are health conscious here. Maha, baby, maha, you know, and there's no reason not to be. It's stupid not to be. But again, not going to turn it into a health show. And if I'm going to consume coffee and there's an option to do it, which I love, there's an option to do it with something that isn't synthetic garbage and it works. Well, what the hell's the debate here? Anyway, promo code TPP, but use the link in the description below and that will take you right there anyway. All right. 1775coffee.com/TPP for the People's Pundit. Right. It'll take you right there. Get yourself that deal. By the way, they still do have some of those starter kits. They just changed them so they can offer something, which you could also do. The frother's so much better than the one that I got from Amazon. Make sure that you don't run out, which I'm about to do. You know, it's just dumb because it does compound. All right. You know what? Next up on the list, should I take a 30-second break? What are we at? 2:49? We don't have time to take a 30-second break. Let's go through this. Next up, our next victim. All right. It was in the news today. Oh, what am I doing? Of course. We have our book clubs that we do, guys. And just bear with me for 2 seconds. Let me give you a locals. I will put this up. I screwed up here. I didn't. I gave you the wrong dates. I thought that it was going to be this weekend. It's not. It's midweek. So it does look like I will be back in time for the show on Friday. I'll put some stuff up, but it may be difficult if I do go, which let's just assume that I will. It may be, I've got a lot of traveling in the next 2 months. It may be difficult for me to get back in time to do the Wednesday show. Laura says, if that's the case, she's going to make me do one Thursday, which is good. And then we'll do one Friday. I thought we had the charity yesterday, and I thought too. And then I thought that the weekend was when something else was, but it's not. So book club as of now is on for Sunday. And if guys, I'm telling you, if you're not joining the book club, you got to join the book club. We're doing Nations and Identities. We're almost done. I may just take a little poll here with the book club audience at some point. Imagine Communities is not an expensive book. We'll probably go to that after, by Benedict Anderson. Nations and Identities was a primer for Imagine Communities. It's a section of it is actually selected by Vincent Pecora for Nations and Identities, but it is not the selection that I personally would have taken. It goes on and on about how print, vernacular led to the evolution of national identity as we know it today. And then, he argues, of course, that it doesn't, that it doesn't matter what some of these other people have argued in the past. It doesn't matter if it is imagined or it's not. We have tons of these kinds of communities. Nation is just one of them. And even if we imagine them, it's real. Very, very interesting stuff. And we'll probably wind up doing the entire book because we're coming to the end of Nations and Identities. I just perhaps see current events changing and pivoting a little bit. And if they do pivot, we always try to keep the book that we're reading very prescient, relevant to current events. And I'm not sure if we go into another book on nationalism at this point, I'm not sure that we'll be able to maintain that relevance. All right. So I'm considering it. I'm kicking it around. I'm marinating on this a little bit, and we'll have to see, guys. Okay. What else? So Sunday, it's on. Missing something. Sunday, it's on. I thought I was. Oh, tonight, quite frankly. Oh, Lord. I think tonight is the night for people to call in and share near-death experiences with me, and then I will engage in this interview like I did during the interview process for the study that you may or may not have heard about. Ooh, this is going to be good. Ooh, I got a lot of feedback on Friday about doing different kinds of shows. A lot of people very much enjoyed Friday's show. I agree. So we need to expand our horizons. There's plenty of time to talk about polling, folks. There's plenty of time to talk about methodology. There's plenty of time to talk about all that. And of course, we have the public polling project. And when we're able to poll, we poll and we'll talk about that, right? I just like the idea of throwing in other stuff. So Peppers, that's for you, because I think I read one of your comments too that basically said we should do more shows like this. I got Friday afternoon and Saturday a ton of feedback from people like, yo, I just watched your show, replay your show. You got to do that kind of stuff more often. And I agree. Anyway, it's relevant. It's totally relevant. The 80s baby was a huge deal in 2024. So last week, the death of Hogan and others made a big deal out of it. All right. Look, we have to go over this article because the other, of course, slappy loser in the U.S. Senate. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to make fun of anyone or just meaninglessly call people names. But I just lost so much respect for these people that I really just don't care anymore, right? He has, without a doubt, a massive entrenchment advantage. However, I have pulled the race myself, and I can tell you without a doubt, he is in deep, deep trouble. And that, of course, is Lindsey Graham. And there are several people running against him. The latest of those people we heard about today. So let's read this and go through this. And here's why I think Paul Dan's Every candidate needs a moment. They have to, you can't just decide there's a lot of anti-incumbent fervor out there. I'm just going to jump on it, call myself the MAGA candidate, and roll with it. And again, Donald Trump has endorsed Lindsey Graham. And by the way, Mr. President, your endorsement doesn't get Lindsey Graham above 50. So whoever told you it does is setting you up to humiliate you. Okay. Now they'll play hardball. And a lot of people, and part of that is in the story, and I'll read that part, of course. We're going to read this whole thing. But you have to have a reason. All right? A reason for being, as the old French expression says. A raison d'être. A reason for being. It's like a presidential justification. Why are you running for president at this current moment? Why are you the man or woman for this current time? Why should the American people say, you know what, right now, in this moment in time in our history, that's the guy? The same thing can be said about the U.S. Senate. And by the way, it should be more often, because we have this really incorrect assumption that a president and a president only a revolution makes. That is not true. And if you are serious, and if, Republicans and Democrats alike who come together on this issue, and they do, there is a common ground. They're desperately, frantically trying to get you to realize trying to get you to be distracted by other things. So you don't realize that there is a common ground on this, because there is. All right. So in the case of the other candidates, I just don't see it. The deep state, the Epstein files, the wars they're trying to get Trump involved in, the wars they have been secretly running or openly running at this point now in Syria, in other parts of the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, right? There is a revolt. And by the way, like when people say they're like repulsed by this stuff, like I want to vomit kind of reaction. All right. That is what's happening right now. And this is I think the president's advisors are setting him up here for real. So even if some of his candidates were to prevail and win, they're a trap. They're an entrapment. Right. So for him personally and his agenda. So the bottom line is, whether it's, something Mike Rogers, unfortunately, he'll probably box out challengers now that Trump endorsed him. Voters are going to have to, especially Republican voters and Trump's voters, they're going to have to decide to preserve his legacy themselves, because he's playing the game. And whatever reason he has to do that, it's not for me to decide. The bottom line is, though, we all know the ending of the story, because we have all seen it before. And Donald Trump will be gone one day. And if you do support that movement, you're going to be left with something that's worse than Mitch McConnell at this rate, if you continue to vote for Lindsey Graham. I would argue that Lindsey Graham is a worse version of Mitch McConnell in the making. Okay. All right. So let's read this article. And this is why I think Paul Dans actually does have that raison that other people don't. All right. Paul Dans, the ex-director of Project 2025, will challenge U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham in the South Carolina GOP primary. Charleston, the original architect of the conservative blueprint President Donald Trump has closely followed since returning to the White House, now is drawing up his next plan to reshape Washington, D.C. He's launching a Republican primary challenge against U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. That first sentence is it. It's his raison is so obvious, the media has to state it in the very first paragraph. The attempts, especially early attempts, the first month, 2-month attempts, the blueprint to avoid a second term disaster like the first term had, Paul Dans put together. Now, the president's campaign can try to pretend that's not true all they want. Paul, I'm sure he gives a very diplomatic answer. I read it this morning. He gives a very diplomatic answer with it, but I don't have to give a diplomatic answer. And the fact is, others like Bannon and Cernovich were right. The campaign was trying to separate themselves because you have to like that. Although, if you're like an influencer, maybe you don't appreciate that as much. So they were like not happy with Chris Lasivita and others who like, you don't throw your friends, your real friends, under the bus for others or to placate your enemies, which is absolutely true. I do agree with that as well. I do though understand the need to make sure that you are you have to make sure you don't let the media get something that sticks to you. And Project 2025 for the general election at that moment, not now, but at that moment, could have been a potential threat. So he had to make sure that they were separated. But the fact of the matter is, everybody knows that they weren't. You should know better. You should know better. All right. The original architect, Paul Dance, the former director of Project 2025, who now lives in Charleston with his wife and 4 children, he has for years, outlined his intention in a recent interview with the Post and Courier, explaining his reasons for entering the GOP contest, despite no experience running for public office and having only thin ties, at best, to the Palmetto State's GOP circles. I don't know if that's fair. Hold on. I am answering Laura. It's kind of important. Come on, Laura. All right. So, Dan's 56 argued that Graham has lost touch with the concerns of everyday South Carolinians, particularly families, and no longer has the trust of conservatives, especially Trump loyalists. That is, listen, I did poll this race. Maybe, I think I probably can whip it up and share it with you when this thing gets up. I'll be polling it again. I'll poll it quite a bit. It's an interesting race. I am like shocked how many people, there's still a good number, of course. There's still a good number of Trump supporters and Trump voters who are like, look, I'm going to back whoever the president backs, but it is not as big as it used to be. And I think part of it is because it's Lindsey Graham. Like they just have had it with Lindsey Graham. And by the way, Lindsey Graham, let's face it, because I think this is important to remember. Whether you think, well, Trump endorsed it. Lindsey Graham was potentially toast in 2020, and Donald Trump saved him. Lindsey Graham is almost certainly toast now and is trying to save him. For what? What has Lindsey Graham done in the 6 years since Donald Trump saved him from defeat? He started 3 wars. Okay, let's be honest. He started one for sure. Him and his late friend John were super pivotal. They are key figures in the starting in NATO's aggression against Russia, because that's what it is. Be honest with yourself. So let's say he started one and he helped start one and supported the other 2. Let's be fair. He has done nothing to hold anybody accountable for anything we know now to have been basically some of the most heinous crimes against the American public, from COVID to Crossfire Hurricane. Nothing. 0. In fact, he has voted for every Democratic nominee that they have put up. He has said nothing about people like Lloyd Austin, who were nominated to be the Secretary of Defense, even though the man does not believe in the principle of civilian control over the U.S. military. Folks, that is why we fought a revolution against the British. Our founders didn't even believe in a standing army. Civilian control over the whole damn thing was essential, not up for debate. He voted to confirm a woman who could not tell a U.S. senator the difference between a man or a woman. Now look at this bright, shining star on the U.S. Supreme Court. She's an absolute idiot. He voted for a man to be the nation's highest ranking diplomat who doesn't believe in diplomacy, who hasn't met a war over the last 30 years that not only has he supported, but helped to incite through the sabotage of diplomacy, like he did during the Iraq War. Tony Blinken, no problem. He has called nobody to account, even though he has tremendous power in the United States Senate. He has called nobody to account for any of these things. The Trump administration hilariously thinks that he helps him with Democrats, even though Donald Trump hasn't gotten a single Democratic vote for any of his key agenda items, not one. So who, and he sure as hell hasn't delivered any Democratic votes in South Carolina. If anything, Democrats are voting for Donald Trump, and that helped save Lindsey Graham's ass in 2020, which everybody knows is true. Lindsey Graham was cooked until Donald Trump pulled away hardcore in South Carolina. He was ahead by single digits. It was, even if he would have won, it was on his way to a humiliating performance. All right, back to it. And by the way, it's only a matter of time before those types of Republicans lose the South. They've already begun to do it in Georgia and in other states where populations of non-whites are too high to rely on 70-30 vote shares among whites anymore. By the way, look at the governor's performance in Mississippi versus Donald Trump's. You want to scare the shit out of yourself if you're a Republican? Go look at it. South Carolina's next. You kidding me? Donald Trump has now 3 times won the state of North Carolina by a margin that the Republican senator has not even been able to touch ever. And now he's retiring because he's so freaking unpopular, he couldn't get elected dog catcher. Wake up. There's a quote from Paul Dance. We have seen where the swamp is, and the swamp is the United States Senate. And the top swamp critter is none other than Lindsey Graham. I had to take this and tweet this earlier because there has never been a truer statement by a candidate trying to overthrow one of these guys. There has never been a truer statement. They have always been the one to derail Donald Trump. It has always been the U.S. Senate. Always. No wall, the Senate. And yes, they had help from so-called conservatives like Paul Ryan in the House, but it was always the Senate. Richard Burr, even the current Secretary of State, allowed them to conduct a sham investigation over the Russian so-called interference in the 2016 election, which gave credibility and credence, along with Lindsey Graham, to the idea that Donald Trump was a Russian agent who colluded with Vladimir Putin. Guys, they were complicit in this because all of these intel agencies have their balls in a jar on their desk. At times during the interview, he described the 70-year-old senator as a warmonger who is out of touch with the MAGA base. Is that wrong? This is a quote. There is no amount of lipstick that you can put on Lindsey Graham to make MAGA fall for him. Okay. The show is over. The jig is up. And it's essentially Sunset Boulevard for Lindsey at this stage. Oh my God. That's funny. Dan said after referencing the July 2023 Trump rally in Pickens, where Graham was loudly booed by the crowd not far from his hometown of Central. By the way, you got to see his numbers in his hometown. They're disgusting. I need to show you guys this. Yeah, he was booed, by the way, with Trump. With Trump. You think Donald Trump's coming to South Carolina to help Lindsey Graham? They say he's going to. What a freaking joke. Chris Lasividis is going to actually spearhead Lindsey Graham's reelection effort. This is humiliating. Is it not? I'm sorry. Is it like, I don't know how you just jump up and down and dance like a monkey. I can't do that, guys. That's not me. Dan said the moment was evidence that Republicans in South Carolina are growing tired of Graham and that Trump's most loyal supporters no longer see the state senior senator as a true ally as the president carries out his second-term agenda. On July 30, after attempting a prayer breakfast at St. Michael's Church in downtown Charleston, Dans will formally announce his candidacy. He will make that's 2 days from now. He will make the declaration inside the Old Exchange in the Provost Dungeon. Dan faces an uphill battle in the state where Graham has been a U.S. senator for more than 2 decades and enjoyed deep ties to the GOP political apparatus. The donors are done with Graham. They're just like afraid to not back him, but they themselves are done with him. That's the truth. I've actually personally talked to a bunch of them. They're at a point where they're just like, you know, if you find somebody viable, I guess if somebody came to me and said someone's viable, I'd do it, but man, you better make sure you win, because he's a vindictive guy. I was told a story actually by one of your other favorite pollsters. Unbelievable how Lindsey Graham ruined this guy's life, and he didn't even fully commit to running against him. And Lindsey Graham, the vindictive piece of shit that he is, destroyed him. Graham kicked off his re-election campaign in February and has already secured Trump's endorsement in the contest. Earlier this month, his campaign announced that Chris LaCivita, a co-campaign manager of Trump's 2024 bid, would serve as a senior advisor. In a July 28th statement to the Post and Courier, LaCivita predicted, like everything else Paul Dan starts, this too will end up prematurely. After being unceremoniously dumped in 24 while trying to torpedo Donald Trump's historic campaign, Paul Dans has parachuted himself into the state of South Carolina in direct opposition to President Trump's longtime friend and ally in the Senate, Lindsey Graham. This is why Robert Barnes says what he says about these people. But first of all, this guy just had dinner with the president like 2 weeks ago. What are you talking about? Dan said he thinks Trump could still change his mind about an endorsement in the contest. I don't know that that's possible, to be honest with you. I just think that he's made up his mind and that's it. The last time I spoke to the president was in February 2024, Dan said. Oh, right. I guess it went to the that was not with right. I kind of want to blow things I shouldn't be saying, but just as Trump did in his first run for office, Stans is styling himself as a political outsider who understands what conservatives want, and he's planning to travel state in the upcoming year to make the case. This is about his wife and his family. He does have a lovely family, there's no doubt. She's on the board of trustees at the Kennedy Center. She also taught this is Mary Helen is his wife. She also taught Natalie Portman how to be a ballerina in the movie Black Swan. This is what I'm saying, though. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't mean to be mean here. I'm not being mean here, but like, everyone knows Lindsey Graham is a like in the closet Republican, and he hasn't even used that, or at least everyone knows it. Everyone says that. Okay. And he hasn't even used this like progressive nature to reach out to new constituencies. Why? Donald Trump is like, I remember 2016 clearly when Donald Trump said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was pro-state. I wouldn't say they're pro-gay marriage statements. They were basically like, look, you live your life and we'll live ours. That's what real conservatives should do. Not that you got to condone it, but it's not for me to judge. And then the crowd actually clapped for him. And I could see in his face that he was like, it was a sincere moment. And I could see his face where he was like, oh, that meant so much to me. He said it out loud. He was like, that just meant so much to me that you guys would be clapping your nominee saying something like that. And it's just totally different. Since Donald Trump reaches out to all of these different groups of people, he makes the party cool again. By the way, apparently he's the chairman of that board of the Kennedy Center, which I didn't know. I just found that out recently. They walk in circles that other Republicans don't know how to walk in. And yet, they think they're going to win back a suburban female educated vote? Who's more likely to do that? A guy who's lying about who he is and pretending to be something he's not, and represents a party that lost that vote because of Bushism, or somebody who literally walks in those circles. This is like a no-brainer to me. Like, why would you not see it's a good thing to have candidates who can be in areas and be with people that the Republican establishment is uncomfortable being around, even if there's someone like Lindsey Graham? Think about it. It's weird, guys. It's not logical. It's not rational. It's not smart, right? And Dan said, by the way, and this is the point I really wanted to get to, that he thinks his work on Project 2025 makes him uniquely qualified for the moment. And this is where he goes into the administrative state being the real, that look, before becoming a behind-the-scenes force crafting the playbook for Trump's return to power. Dan served in the president's first administration, initially as a senior advisor in the Office of Community Planning and Development at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, then at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, which was the federal government's resource arm. Then he left, went to Heritage, which was, think tank. At the time that Paul Dans, this is the part that you're not going to hear, okay? At the time that Paul Dans went to the Heritage Foundation, it was filled with a bunch of Mike Pence loyalists and traitors. Sorry, Heritage. You know it. We all know it. And they were like ruining themselves in the eyes of MAGA and like MAGA circles, circles. And then he came in and he purged all of those Mike Pence fakes. I mean, what do you call them? They're fakes, guys. They're not conservatives. They're not. I mean, this idea like I oppose Trump because of my ideological purity tests. Like that bullshit. You're a fake. He purged all those people, and then he went on to do what says the result was a 922-page blueprint to remake the federal government should a Republican return to the White House. And Trump has largely embraced the playbook, despite reportedly claiming during the campaign that he didn't know and had nothing to do with Project 2020-25. Asked if Trump lied to the American people, listen, this is a good reply. Dan said no. When pressed whether Trump's campaign staff had knowledge of it, he said yes. The people who worked on the campaign were aware of it. More than that, the policies just completely preconditioned the American populace to want this change. There's definitely was a major difference. By the way, former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, he's a two-time loser. I'm sorry, Andre's a nice guy. I'm sorry. It's just that he has no mojo. You know what I mean? He's got some name recognition, but no mojo. Mark Lynch is a dud. Mark Lynch will lose that state to a Democrat. I'm not kidding. You think I'm joking? I'm freaking not. That state is going to go Democrat if they don't get their act together. All right? I'm not kidding. You would say, oh, Rich, it's 16 points. John Kerry lost the state of Virginia to George W. Bush by nearly 10 points in 2004, ladies and gentlemen. By 2008, Barack Obama was able to comfortably win it, a swing of almost 15 points, and Republicans have never seen it again. In part, that was a realignment issue. In part, of course, was how they destroyed the economy, and then Mitt Romney was the worst kind of Republican you could run, of course. But a lot of that was demographics that were going on behind the scenes that Republicans refused to acknowledge. And there are these demographic changes going on in some of these states in the South. And it won't even be remotely close to a problem if Republicans become more of a MAGA party. In fact, it would make it harder for Democrats to win, not only South Carolina, but North Carolina, Mississippi, which is going to be a large black population in Mississippi. It's not like Georgia yet, but if you've looked at some of the recent statewide races there, it could be soon. Georgia, by the way, again, Trump won Georgia 2 out of 3 times. How have Republicans been doing without Donald Trump? Aside from Kemp is a governor, he's a gubernatorial candidate. I've said this over and over again, ad nauseum. Gubernatorial elections are not predictive of presidential outcomes. Gubernatorial elections are not as partisan as federal elections. Large chunks of Democrats will vote Republican. Large chunks of Republicans will vote Democrat. They are more local and localized. I need some kind of like rotating banner that constantly repeats the same stuff over and over again that I apparently have to repeat over and over again because I see the same stupid arguments over and over again. Anyway, there are 3 challengers to Lindsey Graham in South Carolina because obviously they all have run some sort of polling or something, or they maybe just some of them just feel it in their gut. I know that Mark Lynch has because I know who polled for him. I know Andre has. So they all have, I guess. So everyone knows Graham's below 50 and it's bad. And that's even with a follow-up kind of coaching. Some of these pollsters coached these respondents to know that Donald Trump had endorsed Lindsey Graham. even when you make everybody fully aware of the Trump endorsement, it still does not get Lindsey Graham above 50%. I kid you not. Without Trump's endorsement, he's basically at like 40%. With Trump's endorsement, he's like at 48%. That's it. That is the worst. I have polled probably more Trump endorsements than anybody. I have seen them in real time. Hurt candidates and help candidates. There is no other example that I could point to where the endorsement impact is so weak. The president's advisors are going to have to burn bridges. If there's any hope for Lindsey Graham to survive, they're going to have to burn bridges that aren't worth burning for Lindsey Graham. You understand what I'm saying? And how does that advance MAGA, his movement, his agenda? What will that do for his legacy, the lasting impact of his legacy? Will Lindsey Graham protect Donald Trump's legacy when Lindsey Graham is in power in the Senate and Donald Trump is gone? I think you'd have to be a complete moron to believe that he will. He didn't. When Joe Biden was president, Joe Biden systematically destroyed almost everything Donald Trump did. Almost everything Donald Trump did, he undid. What did Lindsey Graham do? He sat on his thumb and rotated. That's what he did. All right. Let's go. It's a little truth telling time, folks. Just time for a little truth telling. Somebody's got to do it. You got this side jumping up and down, cheering and clapping like a bunch of monkeys and seals. You got this side just constantly in a perpetual state of TDS. Like, you know, you got PTSD on this side, TDS on this side. It's like, shut up. This is the truth. The American people voted for this agenda. And as it stands right now, there are a bunch of stupid people making a bunch of stupid decisions and a whole bunch of stuff is going wrong. All right. And that's where we're at. And sorry for bombarding you guys with so much. All right. So with that in mind, time to kick rocks. All right. See, I'm telling you, it was the theme song of the time. Bush knows best. Bush knows best. It was the theme. It was like basically the theme song of the time. It was the mantra. You were a conservative, uncomfortable with the idea of the Department of Homeland Security. You don't know what Bush knows. You don't like expanding the secret FISA court and warrantless surveillance? You don't know what Bush knows. You don't like the TSA? And maybe there should be a little bit of period of calm before we take a crisis and use everybody's panic to change the American way of life? You don't know what George knows. Sick of that shit. Crisis is the rallying cry of the tyrant. James Madison. All right, nothing but love for you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, in all truthfulness. All right, I myself will do the very best to do so myself. Oh, don't forget, quite frankly, later tonight, all right? And then I will keep you posted on exactly what's going on, all right? And I don't know for certain everything yet, but I will keep you posted on it. And if there is, for some reason we can't do the show on Wednesday, we'll make it up on Thursday, and then we'll roll into Friday. I would either way be back. Yeah. It would be late Wednesday, early Thursday, something like that. Right. And then there are some other dates that I have to get with you. In fact, I think Laura already gave them to me to give to you. Bear with me for 1 second. I will try to find them. That's a Tuesday. Don't worry about that, sweetheart. There's a big one. There's a couple of big ones. August 25th. Yeah, that's a show day. Maybe in New York on August 25th. September. Where is it? No, that's Rosh Hashanah, homie. What is that? It's Dawn's birthday. Where is the rest of this? Maybe she didn't put it in there. August 20th. That is a show day too. Be with Barnes in Tennessee. Maybe we'll do something together though. Saturday and Sunday. So that would be book club, guys, in August the 17th. I'll write this out for you guys on locals once we get it all down. Maybe Barnes and I could do something. at some point. Maybe not. Not going to promise anything. It's always so hard to travel with all the crap. It's so difficult. And then the flights always do something with it and you lose something. Where's the camera? Sir, it was all here a second ago. No, it's not. It's in Kalamazoo now. Thank you. All right. Again, as always, don't forget, if you like the shows, we appreciate you. Don't forget to like and share the videos. Thanks to our sponsor over at 1775 Coffee. The link to the description is below. Check out Rejuvenate. You'll like it. You'll like it a lot. And of course, the link to the public polling project is also below. The sooner we fund, the sooner we poll, blah, blah, blah. So eat, wheat, earn with every meal, right? What's that rhyme? Yeah, that's also below. Also share it, because the more contributors there are, the less burden it is on the same people month in and month out, or quarter in and quarter out. We'll poll more if we raise more. We'll poll more. It's that simple. I just put it on quarterly right now, and as you can see, we've already done 2. Yeah, it out of that. So I just still kept it up, and we'll see how it goes. What else? I think that's it. All right. So have yourself a great rest of the day. Nothing but love for you as always. And I'm out. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers, folks. All the best.